everyone. Thank you so much for calling. This is our webinar called or titled The Art of Personal Branding and Career Influence. It's going to be absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see what Nonye has for us. So I'm going to introduce the speaker in a few minutes. But before then, I'm going to talk a little bit about a professional Africa. Can you see me advancing the slides? Thumbs up if you can. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. When I talk about a professional Africa, the first question people ask me is usually, why Africa? Why a professional Africa? It's a very interesting question. One part of it is that the culture that shaped me is the African culture, having grown up in Nigeria for more than 10 years of my life. Fine, I've lived in the US longer than I ever lived in Nigeria, West Africa, but it's still very much in my roots and in my blood. Africa is not just literal. So Africa is the continent, yes. But for me, Africa is also metaphorical. When I think about development, something that has great potential, something deep inside that is amazing, that is not yet out and needs a little bit of work to get out, I think of Africa. So that was also part of my premise for calling this initiative a professional Africa. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Nonye Ndukwe-Onuoha, for those who have not um, met me before. I have 3 electrical engineering degrees. So I have a degree in electrical engineering, a doctorate degree in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. I also got my master's degree in electrical engineering from the same university. And I minored in management, in industrial and systems engineering as well. So on one hand, that's one hat I put on, is the engineering hat. But outside of that, I've played an interesting role in different people's lives. People find me to be somewhat of a counselor. So I have working class friends in different areas of leadership, whether they're a leader, like when I say leader, I mean like a vice president or some kind of executive, or they're still individual contributors. And when they have issues, from a personal point of view, health or financial, and they come to me for help and for advice. And so I play that role as well. I would say something that incredibly changed my life was being a general conference chair for a conference called Power Africa for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, IEEE, which happens to be the largest technical association in the world with over 500,000 members in, I think, over 190 countries around the world. The Power and Energy Society wanted a brand to brand a conference in Africa for them. And I got to work in 2014, and that was 2 years after I graduated with my PhD. So when I started this work, we had initially planned to host the first conference in Tunisia for different reasons. But a few months before the conference was going to be executed, Tunisia had its first terrorist attack. And so we stepped back and then pushed the conference to be in Zambia in 2016. And doing the work then, I had absolutely no support from the ground team in Zambia. The local organizing committee wasn't active. So in addition to working over 60 hours a week full time, I was also working probably over 20 hours a week doing this conference or organizing the conference in Zambia. Thankfully, it was very successful. We had over 30 countries represented. We made profits, and there was so much love and passion behind it that first year that it became a movement, so that we moved it from country to country in Africa every single year, and it's going to be in Kenya this year. So it's opened up it opened up my eyes to what I could be doing in Africa. It had always been my dream to improve power and energy in Africa, and doing it successfully through this conference gave me an idea of how can I do this on a larger scale, not just from a power point of view, electric power point of view, but the conference exposed me to leaders in different multinational companies who said we have strong technical people, so engineers and scientists and so on, but they're struggling from a communications point of view or in soft skills. So they wanted them to improve their skills in leadership, in management, and so on. And that was where I came in, is that I researched courses to help people advance in their careers. But outside of self-paced courses, I wanted to do a lot of knowledge sharing, not just through the conference, but also through webinars. And that's how this idea and initiative was born. But doing research on professionals, we found out that there are 7 key areas that cause stress to working class people. And this is from a 2023 survey of 1,000 US adults. It shows that number 1 and number 3 stressor are personal finances and debt, which to me is basically the same thing. It's really talking about finance. The second and the fourth are mental health and physical health, and they're both on health. And then it talks about relationships. So it really guided our view on what we should be tackling to help professionals succeed, in general. So if you see the quote at the very top, it's a different survey, and it shows the same thing, that financial stress, health concerns, relationship struggles, death and grief, burnout are some of the things that cause people to not succeed in the workplace. And so a Professional Africa touches on 5 pillars or 5 concepts. They are wealth, health, and relationships. So the top 3 areas that research shows that if we can work on these 3 areas, most employees would be successful in the workplace. Then in addition to those 3, we wanted to touch on culture and style as well, because style and your appearance is the first thing that people see when they look at you. And it might be the difference between you getting a promotion and not. So if you have everything else fixed, but then your first impression to people when they see you is not healthy, then you might not succeed as well as you possibly can. The next thing is culture. Culture is intrinsic. So it's what we unintentionally have learned from family and the environments that we grew up in. So it will help expose, for instance, if you're in tune with your culture, you might know that you might have specific biases that you didn't even initially realize. But as you look at your culture, you might begin to say, okay, well, in my culture, people don't typically go to the doctor even if they're sick. They just stay at home. So if you realize that that's how you normally think, and you want to get to develop yourself outside of that, you make it intentional and deliberate to help out or look out for your health better than how you were raised or how what you observed in your environment. So we handle or tackle these 5 areas through webinars as well as through self-paced courses. And today, the topic we're going to be hitting on is on basically style, but bigger than style is personal branding in general. So before we invite Nonye to speak, I want to highlight what we're going to be doing in next month on May 27th, which is International Children's Day. We'll talk about resilience. Having lived in the US for over 20 years, I've observed many things. And also having lived in Africa and having relationships with those in Africa, one of the things, and when I say Africa, I mean the continent as a whole. I have relationships in different countries, so that's why I'm generalizing to say continent. But I see people on the African continent who go through certain serious calamities and tragedy, and somehow they still stay hopeful. They don't lose their faith in, God or whatever it is that keeps them going. And I just wanted us to talk to some Africans about what is it that keeps you going and keeps you joyful and happy despite, dealing with whether it's poverty or not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. What keeps you pushing to succeed in life? I think it's something that we're all going to learn from, and it's under our health pillar, our mental health pillar. How do you stay resilient despite troubles that come your way? So I definitely invite you to join us next month on May 27th. Okay, so today we're going to be talking to a personal brand and image consultant. Her name is Mrs. Nonye Ndukwe-Onuoha. I've known her for a very long time. And as you will see when you see her today, you see how decked out she is and how important personal branding is to her, as well as to those her clients and those she works with. So Nonye is a London College of Fashion trained personal stylist and image consultant who helps women and men curate a timeless style that reflects their individuality while building a strong and authentic personal brand. Beyond her work in style and image consulting, she serves as a housing and real estate procurement business partner. In her free time, Nonya enjoys spending quality time with family and embracing the adventure of solo travel. So, Nonya, welcome, 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 and thank you for being with us today. I'm going to ask you a few questions before we jump into your presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and make you host here so that you can share your screen. We can't see your face yet, Nonya. Let's see. Nonya, can you hear me? It looks like we may have lost her. Oh, okay. Something I did. I'm going to make you host.
Yeah, I think it works now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. The other thing before we jump in, since your host is going to show you people who are in the room, so I don't know if that's going to distract you.
I'm going to be able to see that when I start sharing my screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Normally I'm able to,
Make co-hosts rather than.
yes, but it's not letting me do that right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. Let's just fix this. We had it working before the webinar started, but it seems something is wrong. Um, it's not letting me.
Isn't there a way it can, let me see, allow
It usually would say
participants
it should allow you to share your screen even while I am.
or even allow
I
the,
think I've figured it out.
yeah.
Can you try to see if you can share now?
Okay, just 1 minute. Second. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. You can stop sharing for a second so we can see your face and then I will.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. It's working. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you studied in undergrad and what inspired you to take a break from that life to study fashion and what influenced your decision to pursue this path in the UK specifically?
Thank you very much, Ire, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining from. So, background-wise, actually studied in Nigeria. I've lived in Nigeria for most of my life. I only moved to the UK about 6 years ago. I studied linguistics. I mean, was never really going to go into the language space anyway. And then I moved around from radio into advertising and then moved into procurement, which is where I am now, combining that with real estate. So I didn't exactly move away completely from what I was doing at the time to go into fashion. Matter of fact, being in advertising gave me, I would say, my first role to play in fashion. Because in addition to my day job as an account manager, I was equally, providing styling services to some of my clients. So some of the campaigns like Uber and British Council, a couple of banks, I styled the TV commercials. So there was that. So I wasn't being paid for all of those as an advertising account manager. I was paid as a stylist. And during that time, I mean, I had started to do stuff by the side in terms of education and styling and all of that. And then I took a bit of a break and came to the UK at the time. This was about 10 years ago. Did the course and moved back to Nigeria and continued. And it bettered the brand at the time. I ran like a retail brand by the side as well and just continued, carried on. Fashion is one of those things that, no, let me say style, not fashion, really, because I would say my passion is more about personal style and less about fashion and or what's in vogue about, using what you have to sort of enhance yourself. So it's one of those things that I've just always been able to combine with whatever career path that I'm in. And so outside of my first degree in linguistics, I do have an MBA from University Institute of Lisbon, which I undertook 2 years ago, 2023 to last year. I was shortly in Portugal from London. And so here we are currently with the public sector here. Initially, I mean, up until last year, February, I was with Guinness. I was with Guinness in Nigeria and then moved to the headquarters here. So I was between Dublin, London, and Scotland. And then very recently moved to public sector where I'm overseeing capital works on procurement end. And that's capital works for social housing. So a lot of that has to do with real estate and stuff. Fashion still remains, again, style fashion. I mean, I could use those interchangeably, but really when I say fashion, I mean personal styling and all of that remains at the core of what I do. I'm very passionate about seeing young people thrive just because I have experienced firsthand what it can do to a person's career. I will get into that when I start my presentation because that's one story that has stayed in my head. And if I'm being honest, it shaped me and if really pushed the drive into personal branding because when we spoke, I said personal style is just one part of a bigger thing, which is branding, and we will go into all of that, especially as it relates to your career advancement or influencing things positively within your career. So yeah, this is in summary who I am, where I've come from, and how I've gotten to this point.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'd love your perspective on that relates to culture. So, as someone from a Nigerian background, you as well as myself, where
Mhm.
men often enjoy wearing jewelry like necklaces and bracelets more than some other cultures around the world. What do
Mhm.
you think is the right balance? In your opinion, how much jewelry is just enough for a man?
I would say less is always more, unless, of course, you play in certain industries. If you're not a hip hop artist, I do not expect that you show up at work with chunky chains. Nobody will take you seriously. But with hip hop artists, I mean, no one will question why they have, so much bling because it kind of comes with the industry that they are in. And even with that, there has to be a balance as well. When it's more than one chunky chain, it becomes excessive. So the one thing to always keep in mind is that when you overdo it, it looks like you're trying too hard and it just then moves from being I never ever think that doing too much is glamorous. Some people find it to be. I guess it depends also on your personal style, but it just then becomes tacky. As far as the workplace goes, I would say keep it minimal and where possible, none at all. I don't expect, again, depending on the industry that you work in, a man shows up wearing earrings. But if you're a creative, I suppose I see one of them, I see them maybe one or two, and even then it's toned down, it's nothing overly glittery. And things like neck chains would usually be like tiny ones that you will see, like the barely there ones. I think suppose things like that can pass if it's like nicely tucked into your shirt. But otherwise, generally, even as a culture in Nigeria, much as it's allowed, it's not necessarily a thing that men wear as much jewelry as women would wear it. Yeah.
Great answer. Thank you. So I'd like to hear your advice on when a professional man or woman should consider hiring an image consultant or personal stylist or shopper. Are there clear signs or moments in one's career when this becomes necessary?
I would say don't wait for when it becomes necessary. It becomes necessary the minute you decide you want to succeed in your field. And the reason is because sometimes if you wait for it to get to that point, it might just be a point where you're being let go because of something, and nobody will really tell you most times. Maybe if they are kind enough to let you know that it might be because of your appearance, you don't want to wait until then to start considering, or maybe wait until it becomes obvious that someone, maybe your peer, is constantly being picked over you when you know probably you can do the job better. Then you want to start asking yourself why. So yeah, you could run that risk and wait till then, but I would not. As soon as you decide you want to advance in your career, while you're getting all the relevant skills, getting all the knowledge and building yourself, building the relevant network, you should be thinking of how you present in total, your however you dress and all of that, what it says. Again, we will go into all of this when the presentation starts properly. But yeah, there's no right time other than or better than at the start of your career when you've decided you want to succeed in your career. It's one of those things that you should automatically be thinking about.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'll let you jump into the presentation. And everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat room. Then when Nonye is done, then we'll go through the questions
Yeah.
at that time. So if you don't mind waiting until the end, we would appreciate it. So Nonye, please go ahead and share your screen. I'll go on mute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mm. Okay, just jumping right to it. So let me just say that it's not so much this, I don't want to overwhelm us with a lot of decks because I do want us to have like proper conversations. I want to like engage. And so I'm just going to share the very basics. Back to what I said earlier, I'm not dealing with this purely or solely from a personal style point of view. I'm looking at it in total, where personal style is a bigger part of personal branding and how it helps to form your career influence. Now, what's your personal brand? It's really what you're known for. It's your professional reputation, it's your skills, it's your strength, it's your values, your personality, how people generally perceive you. I mean, when your name is mentioned, where you're not, what do people think about? This is your brand. And the hard truth about personal brand is that it's not always what you want people to think about you, but it is what you consciously and unconsciously give out. So you might be giving a mean girl energy without meaning to give that mean girl energy. You might be giving a cocky man energy without necessarily meaning to give that. But the whole point of this session is to teach you how to be intentional about how you are perceived. It's teaching you how to be intentional about building a brand so that people see you how you want them to see you. Because ultimately, whether or not you work on this, you have a brand even now. There's something you're known for. The way, however it is people perceive you right now is your personal brand. If on your own sincerely, you feel like this is not how I want to be perceived, then this is your chance to build how your brand the way that you want, to be perceived. Now, there are multiple layers of personal brand. As I said, style is just one of them. So I'm just going to touch on that. And so your style is your appearance that consistently represents you. It's you identifying what your personal style is as a person. It's not going outside of who you are. It's not going outside of your personality. It's you staying authentic to yourself, but using what you wear to sort of, embody that even more. If you're naturally not someone who's drawn to colors, expectation is not that you should then start wearing colors because you're trying to build a brand, unless you want to deliberately shift away from what you're known for, maybe for warmer tones and all of that, into the space of colors. So style is really enhancing or bringing your actual personality, who you are, on the outside. So for me, for example, I do more of neutrals, more of blacks, grays, and all of that, like, cool tones and stuff. I I will not in trying to build a brand unless I want to shift from who I am, then start wearing lots of colors, right? So, but whatever style you choose out of the many styles that there are, it should represent your values. If you do not believe in exposing your body, your clothes also should be speaking that same language. It is about the impression that you want people to have of you. When people meet you, what do you want them to live with? Do you want them to think of you as, oh, I love his style, is edgy. Oh, I love her style, is so chic. I love her style, is so, is vavavoom. What exactly is it you want people to think of you? Just, I mean, if you never said any word, if someone just looking at you from a corner, what you want them to see is really that's your personal style. And for me, for example, I get that you will not always have an opportunity to say anything. Sometimes you walk into a room, you don't get a chance to speak to everybody, but someone can see you and just never forget you because of something they saw you, wear, or the way you put yourself together. It's very easy to tell the kind of person a person is just by the outfit that they wear, because it sort of shows you a person who puts in effort versus a person who couldn't care less. And now how this affects your career, we'll come into that, but it definitely does, because if you cannot bother as a person to iron your shirt properly, in my mind, it's giving, lack of attention to details, or you're not bothered to check that the shirt you're wearing matches your trouser, your pants properly. It's also, it's sending a message. So it's really up to you to decide what that style is, what message you want to send to people without them necessarily meeting with you or speaking to you. And then, of course, your style must align with whatever job you do, your role and your industry. If you're in advertising, for instance, expectation is not that you're coming to work decked up in suits and all, but whatever it is you wear should be clean, neat, and should reflect your authentic self. So that's really what your personal style is. So as a stylist, for example, when I work with people, I try not to recommend style for them, out of the blues, because everyone has a personality. So I try to build based on who I see they are. If I know that naturally this person is not comfortable in brogues and would rather wear loafers, I will not force you to wear brogues because I think brogues are stylish. What I would do is would be to work with, loafers, which is what you normally wear as a man. Or if you're a woman who's not drawn to high heels, I will not force you to wear high heels because we're trying to create a certain silhouette, but we'll work with your kind of style. But then the whole point is whatever style that is, it matches your personality. It's not very far from who you are, and it's appealing on the outside. The next part of personal branding is knowledge. And this is extremely key because this is also one of the places that I see people fall short. No one expects you to know everything. And keep in mind that all of what I'm saying is in the context of, the workplace, in a professional setting. You're not expected to know everything, but by all means know a bit of many things, if not everything, just, bits and pieces. And in gaining knowledge, that means you're interacting with people, you're learning from people, you're reading, you're researching, and even topics that you're not familiar with, when they come up, how you handle it also tells a lot about who you are. It tells a lot about your level of intelligence. Some people are not familiar with topics, but then they just they open their mouth and they just say something and it sounds, I mean, the whole room goes quiet. If you're not very conversant with the topic that is being discussed, it's always best to listen and learn. And then while you're listening, you're drawing up intelligent questions that, show that you're keen to learn. So you actually ask questions that sort of, takes the conversation even further. And of course, I already mentioned, don't be quick to contribute, but ask meaningful questions. And then also, very importantly, as far as your career goes, be the go-to person on whatever matters, of your area of expertise. So even if it doesn't have anything to do with your role, that your actual job, if let's say you're a football fanatic, every office has points where they have like the unwind, it's like your happy hours and all of that. You do have bosses who are football fans. You want to be able to chat football with your bosses. Those things have their impact as far as how far a person goes in in a workplace. You register something in their head, and especially when you're speaking about it intelligently, you're not in a space where their mind, for example, is being discussed, and then you come from nowhere and Alex Ferguson has just bought, and everybody's looking at you, but Alex Ferguson is no longer the manager. You're up to speed, you know what's going on, you're current, and all of that, and then you have actual knowledge of whatever it is, and then play this back into your role as well. Whatever it is that your role is, you're the expert that everyone can come to. All of this forms your brand as a person, because then if I have a problem and I know that I can go to Mr. D or Miss D's, that already is a brand, because anybody else has that issue, I will be the one to recommend this person and say, oh, go to this person, they will always know what to do, even if they don't know what to do. Maybe they will tell you to come back while they try to figure it out, just because you've established that brand as a person of someone who knows, being like that go-to person. And this definitely helps you, especially in terms of opportunities. Just to play back something on personal style, I did say I was going to share this story. Years ago, when I was working in Nigeria, I had this colleague, really, really brilliant young lady, very brilliant, one of the people that I went to, when I was uncertain about things at work. But the biggest challenge with her was her dressing. It was so challenging that there would be times she would walk into the office and everyone is just quiet. Quiet because Nigeria is a very hot climate, but then you show up decked up in winter coat, like proper winter coats, sweating under the winter coat. And I'm wondering, like, what's the thinking behind this? And a lot of times it made my boss uncomfortable, because it wasn't just about being in the workplace. She would attend meetings, she was interfacing with clients, so it was a problem. And if it's not winter coat, it's winter shoes. It almost felt like she was living out a life that she didn't have right there in the country. Unfortunately, she was let go. I don't know if at any point she was eventually made to know why she was let go, but I did go and I asked, because I suspected, and one of the bosses outrightly said to me, she does not fit the image of the company. And it really, and said, you don't want a situation. And if she was such a brilliant person, you couldn't just put her behind the screen. There were times that it was unavoidable for her to be, in the face of a client. So she would go to their offices dressed like that. I suppose they were getting feedback. And so those are all the little things that, affect your career growth as a person. And there are things that many people do not pay attention to. I've heard people say, I'm not really a style person, I'm not a fashion person. It has nothing to do with being a fashion person. It has nothing to do with being a style person. It's just about being conscious of how you are perceived based on how you put yourself together on the outside. And mind you, as I said, on the knowledge part, knowledge is a layer of personal branding. But see here, based on the story that I've just told, this lady had everything knowledge-wise. She was somebody we could all go to, but just that one thing that was missing was what cost her her job. So it's not one or the other. All of these things come together to build your personal brand. And when put together in a way that works, balances all out, helps you with both visibility, helps you with promotion at the workplace, and just puts you in rooms where you otherwise may not have access to. Um, the next thing is your composure. Very important. And I say this a bit from the context of my background in Nigeria. There's a lot of, you have issues at work. You see people rarely go in composed. It's always with emotions, feeling victimized and all of that. While that might be the case, it's always a person who is calm under pressure, who can calmly articulate how they are feeling, calmly articulate their challenges, that is always listens to, versus a person who always has a victim mindset and then loses composure. At that point, there's nothing you say that makes sense. But if you can take a deep breath, go back in, carry yourself properly, regardless of how much pressure you're feeling, you're not letting it overwhelm you on the outside to the point that it affects your body language. As a person who's trying to build a personal brand, your body language must reflect your outside, right? It's awkward to be that person who is well dressed, but then in the midst of the slightest pressure, you're throwing tantrums, you're just unable to control yourself, or just not working confidently, not sitting confidently, because some people dress up, but you find out that it's almost like the outfit is carrying them versus them carrying the outfit. All of this has to do with, body language, has to do with composure and how you carry yourself. And of course, I spoke already about emotional control, being able to manage your reactions, responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively. And then, of course, there's also consistent presence, showing up at the same level, with the same level of professionalism across. So you're not professional today, and tomorrow you decide, let's park professionalism one side. There's a consistency in the way you carry yourself. So just to walk you back, there is a style, the way that you look on the outside. There is your knowledge. So you're not just a fine boy, fine girl, person who dresses well, but is empty upstairs. So it's what we will call beauty and brains, if you may. And then you have the composure to carry all of that together. These three form part of your personal branding. And then also there is the role of strategic networking. I'm sure many people here would know the lady on the screen. I've used this photo because I feel like she's one person who resonates with this a lot, and I will speak on why I've said that. And for those who don't know, this is Nigeria's. I don't know if there's any actress who is bigger than Genevieve in Nigeria. Her name is Genevieve Naji, who is bigger. And Genevieve is someone who you will very rarely find her with her peers in the industry. I mean, she has a few friends, but you very rarely find her with her peers. Mostly when you see Genevieve at events, she's sitting with I would say, the kingmakers of the industry. She's sitting with the Moabudus, the producers, the directors, not because she thinks she's better than other people, but it's positioning based on strategic networking. And I will come to this because it's really important. When it comes to networking, I always say to people, especially within my level, be very intentional with how you connect with people who are aligned to your goals. And I'll give an example. In my current workplace, there are designated car parks. When you come into the office, it's like the general car park where everyone, junior, senior managers all park. And then there is the car park where directors park. And in fact, I should say not designated. It's not necessarily for officially designated. We just know that this is where the directors love to park, right? And so they just leave that space for them. But when I came in, that was one of the first things I observed. I remember coming in the first day that I resumed and I parked elsewhere, and I just looked around and I observed, okay, the directors park here. You know what? I started parking there. Not because I didn't think that or not because I thought I was too big to park where other people park, but because I knew that parking where the directors parked will give me chances to meet them in the morning. There's always a high chance that you run into one, either just coming in or going out or something, and that happens a lot. And every opportunity I get, I want to throw in something more than a good morning. I want to chat with them. So consciously at my free time, I'm checking each director out, checking the projects that they are working on, so that if I chance on them at the car park, I have something to strike a conversation with. Oh, how's the beauty project at XYZ going on? I've heard you guys have this challenge. How are you mitigating that? I know all those sort of conversation, it stays in their head. They remember you. And then imagine you have that conversation with three different directors, and at any point they all gather in the same room and your name comes up. They're saying the same thing about you. So that's really what it is about strategic networking, being very intentional and then adding value first, of course. So it's not enough to strike up these conversations. What can you do if you know that there's this challenge? What have you done in terms of your research on how you can support them? I'm very quick to jump in to help directors, even the ones that are not directly in my service area. Because, I mean, even if I don't know, I don't have the expertise for what they want, I will always go and find out, and I'm following up with whoever it is that has, the answers, and call it politicking, whatever you may, but I take that back. I make sure I'm the one going back to them with that solution, even if I'm going to eventually connect them back to this person. But it stays that you added this value. Oh, she met up with me in the morning when I was pulling in and she had this conversation with me. I shared that with her. She went out of her way to do XYZ. It is all part of your branding. Then tomorrow, when your name is mentioned in rooms where you're not, apart from the fact that Osh always looks well put together, he always looks well put together, he's very knowledgeable, he's very calm, composed, he actually adds value. He goes out of his way. So you see how all of these things come together to create a total, personality And it is why I say one has to be very deliberate. If you leave it to chance, people will believe whatever it is they want to believe about you, but you have to be very intentional about how you want to be perceived, how you want to be remembered. And then also build genuine relationships with people. As much as we call all of this office politics, if it's not genuine, people can tell that you're doing it for what you can get from them. So show genuine interest in people, be authentic. When you ask people, how are you? Mean it, how are you? Stay back to hear how they really are, not just, as one of, not as a rhetorical question, right? So build genuine friendships with people, be, genuinely interested in them. Can I say something also that I think might come off a little controversial, but I will explain what I mean? I think that one of the ways to grow and one of the ways to solidify your brand as a person in the workplace is to prioritize relationship with the people at the top much more than your peers. Now, I'm not saying you should walk around with a chip on your shoulders and act like you're better than anyone else, but as much as possible, you don't want to be seen as one of the boys, one of the ladies, with the, where conversations are being had that are not necessarily work related, just regular office gist. No, you can come in, say hello to everybody. By all means, be nice, be helpful, just so that no one can take away from the fact that you're a team player. But spend less time with your peers discussing things that are not necessarily related to work. During your lunch break, pop into a director's office, say hello, share a biscuit or whatever. People who naturally others will see and, want to stay away from, oh, that director is coming, you want to stay away from, you be the one to reach out to them, ask, how are you doing? Have you had lunch? What are you having for lunch? I know in some places it doesn't come very easy. And when I say some places, I mean places like Nigeria, but it's been done. I've done it. It's worked for me. Initially, some of them will look at you and like, you are bold. I've had a director say that to me. So if you're really confident, I say, yes, I'm confident because I don't have anything to fear. If anything, have a lot to gain. And then every now and then you check what time they leave the office. Those last few minutes, just want to go and have light chats and stuff. All of this falls under strategic networking. Before you know it, you're building relationships outside of the workplace with these people. And then if ever a time comes for recommendation, it's very easy for people to recommend people that they connect with on personal levels. And then on work level as well, you're also someone that directors can trust, to play in their space. Let me say, sometimes leaders in the workplace want to be able to connect with the people, underneath. And they cannot do it most times if they don't have people they trust, like people who I would say, I don't want to say, planting people who give them information. No, that's not what I mean. But there's something like someone who can say to them, this is what's going on, and genuinely so, and, help them to form. Because I know that leaders, a lot of them, much as they come out tough on the outside, they really, inside of them, sometimes they deal with, esteem issues, worried if they are leading right and all of that. So, just having that connection with the ones at the lower level kind of helps to put them in check in a lot of cases. And you being that person is already grooming you for a leadership position on your own. And then, as again, I said earlier, maintaining consistency, stay in touch, nurture relationships, not just when, when it's needed, but just always be there and be a person that even your own peers can reach out to, but be the one that everyone knows, I would say, hangs out with the big boys. And yeah, why does personal branding matters? Because it builds trust for you, it builds credibility, it attracts opportunities in the workplace. It attracts opportunities in the workplace and it stands you out. Having a strong personal brand guarantees visibility. People will not forget you. People will not forget how you look. People will not forget how you smell. People will not forget the intelligence that you bring to a conversation. People will not forget a person who is reliable. People will not forget you, a person whose trajectory in terms of relationship positions them for leadership. It's very easy for people to advocate with someone that they connect with. Bottom line, if you're trying to get into a leadership position, you need to start dressing, talking, acting, and positioning yourself. And all of this comes under personal branding. That's really the summary of all of what I've said. As I said, this is quite a broad topic, but I want to be able to sort of like have conversations with us. So I'm going to throw the floor open. If there's any question you have as regards to your own industry that you want me to answer specifically, I'm more than happy to answer that. Thank you very much. I'm mindful of our time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nonye. Everyone, if you could just put your hands together through your reactions. Thank you so much for your time and for this amazing information. I was taking notes while you were speaking, and taking pictures as well of some of the slides. So that was great. I want to open it up to questions. Before I do that, actually, Nonye has just spoken. Nonye is also a style coach. If she's someone you want to talk to, and I have a couple others as well. And if you feel like you need to work on your style or just your personal brand, just connect with me, and I will connect you to Nonye as well. In addition, there is a personal branding self-paced online course that I share with people as well. If it's something that you'd be interested in taking, if you're someone who learns more by like reading and all of that, there's a course that's there for you as well. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I'll open up your video and your audio as well. But before we have questions while I wait, Nonya, you talked about for yourself, you stick to kind of neutrals, white, blacks, tan, nude colors. If someone shows up at work in a fitted, nice looking, let's say yellow suit or yellow dress or red dress, something colorful, would it take away from the person or does it depend on the kind of place they're working?
If you showed up in a yellow dress in my kind of industry, someone will most likely ask if you had another appointment, if you were going somewhere else from work. But if you work in entertainment, for instance, that will be totally okay. So you
Okay.
need to, all of that, you need to factor it in. By the way, you can also wear a touch of yellow without being going over the top. So it might not be yellow from top to bottom. It might just be maybe a nice yellow scarf over a black dress that can fly if you absolutely must wear color, but it just has to stay within, limits or within the confines of the industry that you play in.
Okay, thank you. What accessories would you say are important for a woman? And when I ask this question, because you just talked about a scarf, I think of Anna Wintour, who is the editor for what's that?
Vogue,
Is it Harper's Bazaar? For
Vogue.
Vogue, yes, thank you. And I feel like her signature piece is always like a a special kind of necklace. Like every time I've seen her, that's something that is kind of her thing. What accessories do you think every woman should have?
To be honest, accessories depend on you. There is no rule that says every woman must wear a necklace. There's no rule that says every woman must wear an earrings. I've seen people look really beautiful not wearing any piece of jewelry at all. I don't have anything right now wearing, and sometimes I go to work like this, right? But what I will not do, even when I wear, I probably just have one bracelet. I will not stack. But then there are people who stack and they look nice, again, depending on where they work. The one accessory I would say every woman should wear is a good scent. Wear perfumes, smell nice. Even if, and this is one of the things I make sure of, I like to hug. I'm such a hugger. And I do it intentionally because I want you to remember me. If you remember nothing, you remember that you hugged a woman who smells really nice. It's
But
all part of it.
there's such a thing as 'cause I remember back in the day when what was that Thierry Mugler's what's the name of that perfume? Angel. I think it was Angel by Thierry.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
remember when it first came out and people oversprayed it. It's like where you would step into a bank or step into an office and you would just be hit. So where I now some people say, okay, you should always spray behind your ears or behind, right on your, wrists or how much perfume is too much and where should you be spraying that? And then we'll talk about questions that are in the chat room.
Okay. In terms of perfumes, I've recently been told that we should actually not spray perfumes directly on our bodies due to the risk of cancer. Before now, I would do hair, like the normal touch points, and then, hair, just so that if you give someone a handshake, they leave with something. And normally I would say those two are enough for workplace, because you don't want to overwhelm people at work. You don't want to walk in and people are choking and all of that. And when you've won a lot, even you yourself are comfortable, right? So I would say just 3 sprays across, here, and maybe wherever else, if it's below, maybe your bottom, anywhere else, but maybe just here, just lightly. Any good fragrance will project, right? And that should be okay. You don't want your perfumes to, not in the work setting, get into the office before you. If you were going for a cocktail or something, I would wear heavy perfumes. If I was going for a night event, I'm still outside, but you can already smell someone coming in. That's appropriate. But in the workplace, that's inappropriate, because it just, sometimes it will position you as an unserious person, like you have other priorities, if you get what I mean, if you're coming
Right.
in smelling that heavy. So yeah, I think that would be it on perfumes. It's really, and we I think most times we know the truth. It's just, less is more. Don't overdo
Okay.
anything you do. Yeah.
Okay. So Samantha asks, is it okay to always wear a wedding ring at work?
I think she has a first question. Do I have a style book? No, I don't have a style book, but I can give you recommendations. But I'll also tell you, right? Instagram is a very good place to start. One of the ways, one of the ways is to find somebody whose style you relate with and copy away, but just make sure you're staying true to yourself. You're not showing up and people are wondering, who is this? It's not very far from who you are. It's just enhancing who you are and you're comfortable. And is it always good to wear a wedding ring? I don't see a problem with wearing wedding ring. Matter of fact, I had this conversation years ago where someone said to me that the photo I had on LinkedIn at the time had my wedding ring, very visible, and the recruiters won't reach out to me because of it. I said, well, I don't want to work with an organization that has a problem with my wedding ring. That already smells of toxicity even before I go in. So if my wedding ring will be a problem, then by all means don't hire me, right? It's a bigger issue if you ask me. So yes, you're married, wear your wedding ring, is not a problem.
Awesome. Then Uzoma had a question. She said, great presentation, Nonye. What would you say to the person who says they don't have the budget to work with a stylist or image consultant? And to add to the question is, because some people might think it's that you have to pay $200 an hour, $300 an hour, when it's actually might be less than that. So what do you say to someone who thinks they don't have a budget?
First thing again, you never know until you ask. Go out there and check. Just ask. You never know until you ask. As you said, Uri, someone could automatically assume, oh, I don't have money because I think it's 500. Meanwhile, you could actually get a proper consultation done in an hour for 100,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And if I don't have the money to do it, I will always online. There's so many resources online. There's so many resources. You want to start by checking out the different types of style and see which one you fit into, see which one speaks more to you. For me, for example, I know I'm more drawn to classic pieces, timeless pieces, versus trendy, right? If a particular style of dress is trending, you very rarely find me wearing that unless I'm sure that it can stay in my wardrobe for the longer run and I can style it in at least 10 different ways. With trends, it's not always like that, but some people don't. I always tell people trends are actually more expensive, to keep up with than building a classic wardrobe. So if you cannot afford a stylist or an image consultant, I would say use the internet. There's a whole lot
Yeah.
there,
Yes,
really.
and I think also, and that's a great answer. And like you said, ask. So I mentioned before, if you want to talk to her, let me know, and I will get you in touch. But also, even in terms of timeless pieces, there are things that my mom wore ages ago, like purses and belts, and that I still wear today because it was quality. I think one thing that my grandma used to say to my mom and her siblings was buy buy quality over trends, like Nonya said. If you buy quality, like my grandma in the village, we used to in Igbo land, we wear what we call wrappers. It's like fabric, it's just a basic rectangular fabric, but you just wrap it around your waist or wrap it around your chest. But she would say, instead of using whatever little money she had and I explain what I mean by this, to buy a cheap wrapper. Like she would save up. And when I say that, she was actually a successful businesswoman, but she would say, don't spend money and buy something just because it looks good today. And then the next week, when you're washing it with your hands, because they didn't have like washing machines then, it would rip. But she would always purchase things that she could leave. It was part of her legacy to leave for her kids. And my mom did the same thing with us, like
Yeah.
sunglasses, belts, purses that we're still wearing today and still look like they're in fashion. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something. And then talking about what Nonye said too about guides, it's like with therapy, there are certain things you can do self-therapy, learn stuff online, but there are times when you actually need accountability. And so you need somebody to help you with the process. So it's just something to think about. But great question, Uzoma, and great question, Samantha. Samantha, I shared in the chat room a link to the course on thanks, Uzo. I shared a link to the course on personal branding for those who want to look at it. I learned a lot, Nonya, because when we talked about this, in my head, I was thinking it was just going to be style, but how you brought in the career influence, strategic networking, making sure you stop by the offices of those who are higher up, just so that they know who you are, but not going with an empty brain, like you said, going in with actual information to share. So if they ask you technical questions, you'll be able to respond. So I
Yeah.
wrote a note for myself. I need to start reading more engineering magazines so that, I can sound more knowledgeable even about outside of the areas that I work in. So is there anything else you want to share with everyone before we
There's a
end?
question. Is it true that Monday is always a formal dress code? I think it depends on your industry. Let me be honest, for me, I like to always dress up on Monday because it's kind of in my head kickstarts my week. So Mondays are my power dressing days. Because then a lot of people show up on Monday, a lot of directors show up on Monday who may not necessarily come into the office other days of the week. So Mondays, yes, personally, they're my best days because it sets the tone for my week. And then, yeah, in terms of one final thing I want to add, I didn't put that in the slide actually, and I thought about it while we were talking. One of the things that also builds or enhances a very strong personal brand is boundaries, restricting access. And I will say this, even with the periodic check-ins with the people that matter, you want to not overdo it. If you are constantly in people's faces, whoever it is, it waters down your brand. It is not every invitation you accept. You don't be everywhere. When people see you a lot too much, your presence stops to carry essence. It is the truth, regardless of who you are. Even if you're the president, if you are at every single event you're invited, you start to look basic like everybody else. What I do is like it's not everybody's event at work I attend. If I can send you flowers ahead, I will do that. If it's to give you a nice card and politely decline. But obviously, this is not for the people who matter. Those ones don't have events every other time anyway. But even then, it's not every single person at the leadership level I attend their events because I'm also checking what does my presence here add to me, to this person, and all. Because you want to keep the respect both ways. I don't want respect just from my peers and subordinates alone. I also want respect from the leadership, which means, oh, no, I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? Well, good. I've been around. Oh, let's catch up because he hasn't seen me for a while. But if you see me every day, you become like everybody else. So one way to add value as a person to yourself, to set a standard for yourself is making sure you're not everywhere. Be scarce a little. It's not pride, it's not arrogance. Of course, you need to do these things properly because I always say this that there's a very tiny line, very thin line between arrogance and confidence. If you're not careful, you cross over to the other side without necessarily knowing it. But as much as possible, self-respect, that's really what boundaries does to you. It makes it easier also, for people to respect you, but the more they see you, the tendency to be disrespected, even when they don't necessarily mean to, is much higher.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nonye. I think I saw Kimberly show a heart there. I thought about Kimberly when you said what you said, the last thing that you said about not breeding familiarity. So I love that. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone for calling in. I really appreciate it. We have our next webinar on May 27th, so please mark your calendars and register for that as well. So thank you and have a blessed